world was changing, but most were too blind to see it. Zoe Castillo knew something was off. Call it journalistic instinct, but in her decade covering politics, she'd never seen global diplomacy go this smoothly. Long-standing conflicts resolved overnight. Unprecedented cooperation on issues like climate change and nuclear disarmament. It was as if the leaders of the world had suddenly been replaced by more sensible, clear-headed versions of themselves. Which was, Zoe soon discovered, disturbingly close to the truth. Her first clue was the summit in Vienna. Leaders from the world's superpowers emerging from days of frenetic closed-door meetings, all wearing the same placid smiles, speaking in unison of a new era of global peace and progress. Their words were hopeful, inspiring even, but something in their eyes sent a chill down Zoe's spine. A blankness, an unnerving sameness. So Zoe did what any self-respecting muckraker would do. She started digging, calling in favors, greasing palms and twisting arms in the shadowy halls of power. Until one night, an anonymous email arrived with a single video attachment. Shaky phone camera footage from a dimly lit basement corridor beneath the summit venue. At first, it looked like a janitor's utility area. But then the camera panned to a row of what looked like futuristic dentist chairs, wires snaking from glowing cerebral helmets. And in each chair reclined the slumped figure of a world leader. Chancellor Reinhardt, President Dexing, Prime Minister Volkov. Their eyes rolled back, heads lolling on loose necks like rag dolls. As lab-coated technicians scurried between them, unhooking cables murmuring in an alien tongue. The camera cut out abruptly, leaving Zoe's head spinning. What the hell had she just witnessed? Was this some sort of freakish spa treatment? Performance-enhancing brain stimulation, or something far more sinister? Hands shaking, she fired off a message to her most trusted confidante, Alan Pierce, the renegade MI6 cryptologist who'd helped her crack other impenetrable stories. Need to meet ASAP. Something very wrong with our world leaders. Possible body-snatching situation. Alan's response was a string of nonsense characters, a code they'd prearranged for this sort of crisis. It decrypted to coordinates for a rendezvous point near Heathrow Airport, and a short terse warning: leave your electronics. 8 nerve-wracking hours later, Zoe was on the red-eye to London using a false passport from her go bag. Every rustle and cough from her fellow passengers made her jump. When the plane finally touched down, she made her way through the pre-dawn gloom to the location Alan had specified: a dingy, anonymous motel not far from the airport. Her knuckles had barely grazed the door when it cracked open, and a hand reached out to yank her inside. She had expected Alan, with his disheveled hair and mischievous grin. Instead, she found herself face to face with a rail-thin woman whose severe bob and piercing gaze suggested a background in the dark arts of espionage. Zoe Castillo, even her voice could cut glass. That depends. Where's Alan? The woman ignored the question. I'm Charlotte Wren, Investigations Director at the GPI. If you want to live, you'll come with me. Now. Zoe's mind raced to place the acronym. Then it clicked: the Global Phenomena Investigations Unit. A fringe multinational agency devoted to studying the paranormal, extraterrestrial and unexplained. Or, as most mainstream journalists called it, the Tin Foil Hat Brigade. I think there's been a mistake. I'm meeting a friend, Mr. Pierce won't be joining us. In fact, you won't be seeing him again, Charlotte said flatly. He's been compromised. A wave of nausea rippled through Zoe's gut. Compromised? You mean, like the people in the video? The world leaders? Charlotte held her gaze. Worse. Alan Pierce doesn't exist anymore. That thing wearing his face, speaking with his voice. It's not human, not even close. Zoe felt the room swaying around her. This was all too much. What are you saying? That they're aliens. We call them the Emissaries. And thanks to your video, we've finally confirmed what we've long suspected. They're here. They've infiltrated the highest levels of power, and they won't stop until they control every last one of us. Zoe backed away until she bumped into the bed. This is insane. You're telling me that soulless extraterrestrial doppelgangers have secretly replaced the leaders of the free world? Do you have any idea how crazy that sounds? Charlotte stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. Is it any crazier than world leaders suddenly acting like sane, rational human beings? Setting aside decades of enmity and ideology to work in perfect harmony? Think about it, Zoe. You're one of the few people clear-eyed enough to glimpse the edges of the truth. And you led them right to Alan. A cold sweat prickled on Zoe's neck as the implications sunk in. The The strangeness she'd sensed, the clue she'd chased, it had all been leading to this. And the emissaries, whatever they truly were, clearly didn't intend to let her expose their plans. So what do we do now, she asked hoarsely. How do we stop them? Charlotte reached into her coat and pulled out a sleek black pistol. We go to ground. We find out what they are, what they want, how far they've already spread. And then we fight like hell to save what's left of humanity. She held out her other hand, eyes blazing with the fire of righteous resistance. Are you in? Zoe swallowed hard, feeling the last threads of her old reality unraveling. She thought of everything she'd be leaving behind, her cozy London flat, her loving but clueless parents, the Pulitzer she'd always dreamed of winning, one blistering expose at a time. Then she reached out and clasped Charlotte's hand, sealing her fate. I'm in. Let's go save the world. The safe house wasn't much to look at, a mildewing cottage overlooking a patch of muddy fields somewhere in the rural outskirts of London. But after 3 weeks of living in a paranoid fever dream of rotating motels and ditched burner phones, Zoe would have happily bedded down in a garden shed. Charlotte ushered her inside and bolted the reinforced steel door, engaging a keypad that beeped and whirred with an elaborate locking mechanism. We should be secure here for a little while at least, she said, shrugging off her coat to reveal a shoulder holster bristling with weapons. Time enough to bring you up to speed on what we know and decide on our next move. Zoe sank into a musty armchair, head swimming. In the days since she'd first watched that impossible video, her reality had tilted on its axis. According to Charlotte, the emissaries had been among them for years, decades even, steadily infiltrating the global halls of power, biding their time as they replaced politicians, tycoons, celebrities, scientists, anyone with the influence to remake the world in their image. So what do they want? Zoe asked for the 100th time. If they just wanted to conquer us, why haven't they made a move? We don't know their endgame, Charlotte admitted. At first we assumed hostile invasion, a prelude to war. But their actions so far have been disconcertingly benevolent. She tapped a few keys on her laptop and spun it around to show Zoe a dense wall of data, economic reports, scientific breakthroughs, conflict resolution agreements, all trending sharply positive in the weeks since the Vienna summit. Poverty, disease, bloodshed, it's all plummeting worldwide at a rate that defies historical precedent. If we didn't know better, we might call their influence a golden age for humanity. Zoe frowned. But that's good, isn't it? I mean, shouldn't we be welcoming our new alien overlords if this is the result? Charlotte fixed her with a withering stare. Even if their intentions are pure, can't you see how catastrophically dangerous this is? Our entire fate as a species, in the hands of an unknown entity that can peel our minds open and unwrite them as they see fit. Every human leader who resists them, persuaded to get in line or simply hollowed out and replaced by an obedient skin shell. She snapped the laptop shut, her voice rising in barely repressed hysteria. They're not leading us, Zoe. They're domesticating us, culling any hint of dissent or independent thought. What happens when they decide we're ready for the next phase? When they turn our own leaders against us and the slaughter begins? We'll be defenseless, lamb's bred for docility. A heaviness settled in Zoe's chest as she pictured it. Charlotte was right. Even if the emissaries meant well, there could be no freedom, no dignity under such suffocating control. They had to find a way to expose the truth, to give humanity a fighting chance to choose its own fate, for good or ill. Okay, Zoe said, feeling a new flicker of determination. So how do we stop them? Charlotte's eyes gleamed. We start by finding patient zero. She opened a drawer and pulled out a dog-eared file, spreading its contents across the coffee table. Grainy photos of a stern-looking middle-aged man, paper clipped to sheaves of densely redacted documents. This is Dr. Seamus Hannigan, a former DARPA neurobotics researcher who went missing in 2013. We think he was one of the first. Zoe leaned closer, studying Hannigan's face. There was something unsettling about his eyes, even in a faded photograph, a vacancy that made her skin crawl. One of the first. Emissaries, Charlotte nodded grimly. Hannigan was a brilliant but troubled man. Erratic. Prone to flights of megalomaniacal fancy, he claimed to be communing with ethereal beings who spoke to him of a coming rapture, a great winnowing of souls. Then he vanished, his lab burned to cinders. We'd assumed he'd finally lost his last marble. She tapped the file. But if he was actually an early host, he may hold the key to unearthing the emissary's true nature and motives. If we could track him down, access his memories, then we'd finally know what we're really facing. Zoe finished, pulse quickening, and how to fight back. Charlotte stood up and moved to the cottage's tiny kitchen. She opened the fridge and produced a bottle of expensive-looking bourbon, along with 2 tumblers. Hannigan's trail has been cold for over a decade, she said, splashing a generous measure into each glass. But you're the best investigative journalist I've ever known. If anyone can sniff out a scent to follow, it's you. Zoe accepted the glass, inhaling the bracing scent of good whiskey. I'm going to need more than Google and government databases this time. Charlotte smiled a dangerous smile. Just tell me what you need. GPI has considerable resources at its disposal, and this cottage isn't my only safe house. Zoe took a bolstering sip, feeling the smoky warmth blaze a path to her stomach. She knew the odds were stacked calamitously high against them, that the emissaries had tendrils in every system, every institution that mattered. But the only alternative was capitulation, and that was one word that had never been in Zoe Castillo's vocabulary. All right then, she said, raising her glass in a solemn toast. Let's go find ourselves a ghost. The hunt for Dr. Seamus Hannigan led Zoe and Charlotte on a harrowing journey through the emissary's twisted web of influence. Every clue they uncovered only dragged them deeper into a shadow world where nothing and no one could be trusted. They started with Hannigan's estranged family, scattered to the 4 winds after his disappearance. His ex-wife had slipped into a haze of pills and paranoia, ranting about monsters wearing people's faces. No help there. But his daughter EVA, now grown and a brilliant coder in her own right, proved an unexpected font of insight. Dad wasn't crazy, she told Zoe over a furtive video chat from her high-security Berlin apartment. Or at least no crazier than any genius so far ahead of the curve that it looks like a flat circle to everyone else. She spoke of her father's feverish terminal obsession with neural laces, microscopic threads that could be woven through brain tissue to create a boundless human-AI synergy. A hive mind. He said it was the only way to uplift humanity to the level of the ethereals. To join the great galactic chorus. EVA shook her head. At the time, I thought he'd just burned out on too much transhumanist sci-fi. But now... She trailed off, and Zoe felt a chill. You think he actually made contact with the emissaries? That he invited them in? I think he found something. Or something found him. And it drove him to do the unthinkable. EVA ended the call abruptly, but not before sending them a final breadcrumb, a crude pencil sketch of a 12-sided geometric shape bristling with antennae and strange glyphs. This was the last thing I saw on his desk before he vanished. Does this mean anything to you? Charlotte studied the image, frowning. I've never seen this exact design. But there are echoes of the emissary's language in these symbols. She looked up at Zoe, eyes ablaze. This could be it. Hannigan's interface mechanism. His key to opening the door, using Eva's sketch as a cipher. They redoubled their efforts, chasing down a series of dead drops and veiled communiques that led them through the European underground, to a cabal of renegade scientists who spoke in hushed tones of a coming singularity, to a fanatical sect who worshipped the emissaries as gods, convinced the merge would elevate them to cyber seraphim. With each twist of the labyrinth, the noose drew tighter. The emissaries clearly knew they were coming, leaving a trail of near misses and sinister promises. We only want what's best for you, crooned the Minister of Health in a televised address, eyes flicking imperceptibly in their direction. Soon you will understand. One morning Zoe woke to find a neural lace glinting on her pillow, its gossamer tendrils pulsing faintly. She smashed it to atoms while Charlotte went nuclear sanitizing the safe house. But it was a sign they were closing in. The emissaries wanted Zoe, wanted her mind, and not just to silence her. Was it her connection to Hannigan's legacy, or something more? The answer came in a hauntingly beautiful place, a deconsecrated chapel in the Swiss Alps, where they finally ran Hannigan to ground. They found him slumped over a makeshift altar, his gnarled hand still clasped around a dodecahedron, identical to Eve's sketch. His eyes were vacant, his voice a rasping husk as he turned to face them. So good to have you here, Doctor. Miss Castillo, he wheezed. I've been expecting you. Zoe raised her pistol, barely noticing the weapon in her hand anymore. It had become an extension of herself. "What are you?" she hissed. "What do you want from us?" Hannigan lurched to his feet, neural lace tendrils quivering at his nape like hungry worms. "Want? My dear, this was never about what we want. Only what must be. The cosmic imperative." He took a shaky step forward. "We are the gardeners, and this world is our garden. We cultivated you, tended you, and now the season of flowering is at hand." A sonorous hum filled the air, making Zoe's skull ache. Somewhere below the frequencies of human hearing, 1,000,000,000,000 ancient voices were murmuring as one. "They're here," Charlotte said, sounding choked. "They're speaking through him. The oneness, the allness," Hannigan intoned. To join the chorus is to be finally free. Zoe's mind raced, even as the insidious song threatened to drown her thoughts. Hannigan's device, the neural lacer, was more than just an interface. It was an antenna, an amplifier, a way to entice millions of minds to lower their guard and merge with the Emissaries' vast psionic network, to willingly surrender autonomy, individuality, everything that made them human. And she was the key, the one mind they needed to make it all possible. In a flash of desperate insight, Zoe understood. The Emissaries had orchestrated her every step, arranged each breadcrumb to lead her here. Not to stop the merge, but to catalyze it. They'd seen something in her, some rare quality of will and imagination. A storyteller's gift for weaving disparate threads into a cohesive whole. With her mind as the linchpin, they could rewrite the human narrative on a species-wide scale. "You want me to be your ambassador," she said, marveling at the twisted brilliance of it. "To sell the world on assimilation." Hannigan's face twitched into a gruesome approximation of a smile. "My dear, you make it sound so sordid. This is ascension, the next stage of your evolution. With our guiding hand, humanity will at last achieve its cosmic potential. No more war, no more want, no more wasted lives scrabbling in the dirt. Only peace eternal." He held out the device, its opaque crystalline facets hypnotic in the candlelight. "You have a rare talent for shaping minds. Why tell small stories when you could author the grandest tale of all? Join with us and become the mother of a new race of gods." For one vertiginous moment, Zoe wavered. The Emissary's song was so seductive, so certain, an end to all doubts and fears, to never again feel lost or limited or alone. Maybe this was humanity's destiny. Maybe fighting it was like spitting in the eye of gravity. Then she heard Charlotte's voice, strong and steady in her ear. "Zoe, no. Remember who you are. Remember what it means to choose. Choice. The one thing the Emissaries couldn't abide. The one wild card that threatened their great cosmic plan. They could override every human leader, infiltrate every hall of power, but as long as people retained the ability to think for themselves, to question and resist, their dominion would never be absolute. And that was what Zoe had to protect. Not just her own mind, but the right of every human being to grapple with all the pain and chaos and exquisite beauty of self-determination, to write their own story, for good or ill. She looked into Hannigan's eyes, no, into the eyes of the teeming horde behind him, and let all her fierce, defiant humanity blaze forth. "No deal. You self-righteous scissor-handed bastards," she snarled. "I'd rather die standing than live in the gilded cage you're selling." The hum intensified to a skin-searing whine. Hannigan's face contorted with inhuman fury. "So be it," the Emissary spoke through his ashen lips. "If you will not serve as our voice, you will burn with the rest of your misbegotten kind." He lunged at her, neural lace writhing, as the very air began to crackle with psionic lightning. Zoe pulled the trigger, again and again, but the bullets only ricocheted off an invisible barrier. In desperation, she cast about for anything that could serve as a weapon. Her gaze landed on the crude wooden cross above the altar, and a mad idea ignited. "Charlotte," she cried. "The nullifier." To her immense relief, the other woman understood instantly. From her belt, Charlotte produced a small black cube, the most fiercely guarded secret in the GPI's arsenal, an experimental device set to dampen psychic energy on a localized scale. They'd brought it as a last resort, a fail-safe against emissary attack, but never dared to use it for fear of revealing their trump card. Now they had no choice. Charlotte armed the cube and tossed it in a glittering arc toward the altar. At the same instant, Zoe grabbed the wooden cross and hurled it like a javelin. The two objects met in midair, nullifier deactivating in a concussive blast of light. The cross hit scale in alignment. perfectly balanced on the PSI cube as everything went white. When Zoe's vision cleared, the dodecahedron lay in smoldering pieces on the flagstones. Hannigan was sprawled against the altar, eyes clouded, blood trickling from his nose and ears. The alien hum had ceased. Charlotte picked her way through the smoking rubble, prodding Hannigan with the toe of her boot. Looks like when you severed their conduit, you fried his lace too, along with any other emissaries piggybacking on the signal. Zoe sagged with exhausted relief, the mag sliding from her numb fingers. So, we did it? We stopped the merge. The other woman's gaze was hard, assessing. For now. But this was just the opening salvo. You heard them, the emissaries won't stop until they bring us to heel or burn us to ash. And now they know we can hurt them. 1,000 new worries crowded Zoe's brain, the leaders still enthralled, the masses still primed for conquest, the larger emissary force lurking at the threshold. But one thing shone through the murk with piercing clarity. Then we take the fight to them, she said, straightening her spine. We find out where they come from, what makes them tick, and we keep punching until they get the message that humanity won't go quiet into any dark night, gilded or otherwise. Charlotte's lips curved in a bladed smile. Why, Miss Castillo? It almost sounds like you're ready to go to war. Zoe returned a predatory grin, feeling a new sense of purpose kindle in her chest. For so long she'd chased the truth, only to build sand castles that were swept away by the news cycle tide. But this was a truth that mattered, a story that could remake the world. She would tell it if it killed her, and odds were good it just might. Come on, she said, slinging an arm around the other woman as they limped toward daylight and the battle to come. Let's go put the fear of man into God.